Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on this webinar, Selling to Business B2B in the Digital Age. Ricky is my name. I'm a digital business advisor at Business Station. And today, as the name implies, we're going to talk about ways to, generate more business by using hopefully a strong online presence to attract customers to your website or your social pages, and then ideally convert them into leads or customers. So a little bit about me, I guess. Like I said, I work for Digital Business Station. I do have a background, 10 plus years in the digital space, but prior to that, I very much had a career in, say, the more traditional non-digital business-to-business sales and business development. So in those roles, I participated in many sort of bid teams, responding to RFQs and tenders and RFPs and the like, some multi-million-dollar proposals, some successful, some not so successful. So hopefully I can bring a bit of both of those sides to the table today and share some of my insights into what I think people should be doing today if they're marketing to business. So let's look at some of the things we're going to talk about. So firstly, we'll just have a brief overview discussion about what B2B is and why it's unique, comparing it to, say, consumer marketing. Then we'll talk about some things like the importance of having a really strong online presence and what that actually means, and how to use inbound marketing to attract prospects to your website or your socials, content marketing and email marketing. We'll touch on digital advertising and where you might use one over the other, and a range of other things like how you can connect to decision makers, how you can use eCommerce on your website to sell your products. Even if you're selling to businesses, it's generally considered a consumer platform, but I don't necessarily agree with that. And then some apps that you might want to consider as well. So the whole idea is really, as part of, in terms of what you'd want to get out of this webinar, is to not be in a situation like this, where you're putting a proposal in front of a business customer and they have no idea who you are or what you do. So building relationships is important, understanding who those customers are so they know who you are and what you do, what your capabilities are. It's a little bit different in the consumer space, where that relationship isn't really that important. So let's just look at the B2B marketplace and the features that define the sales process in B2B. So the first one, and probably the most important, is that there's more decision makers. You're not just selling to a decision maker, you're generally selling to multiples. There may be a final decision maker, but there's often multiple other decision makers too. So, it could be the operations manager or director, it could be the financial controller. There's also technical specialists that have technical expertise in certain things. They're going to give their opinion on certain solutions and that sort of thing. And then there's influencers. So an influencer might be, for example, just the user of that particular solution. So they may not be a final decision maker, but they've got input into the decision. So in that regard, there's many more people you need to influence. And partly because of that, there's usually, not always just because of that, but usually a longer sales cycle. So they're not going to, just make a decision on the spot. They're going to thoughtfully consider a solution that's going to best fit their business. So because of that, you've also, and what they're looking for from a business perspective is a longer relationship with their suppliers, their providers, their vendors, because you've got to build a relationship with these decision makers, but they also want to know more about your product and how much of a fit or service there might be for their particular need. So because of that, there's generally a need for better relationships than you might have with, say, in a consumer situation. And so it's, like I said before, it's not a spontaneous purchase usually. It's usually a considered and cautious approach to making a decision about most things that they're going to buy. So that's some of the features. Now, in all online sales situations, generally speaking, there is a process that decision makers go through, and that process might be very short, or it could be a longer process. And this is where they're deciding on whether a particular product, well, they're firstly identifying what their product or service solution might be, and whether it's a fit for their particular need. And this is often called a customer journey map. So a simple customer journey map, not necessarily a B2B one, might be something like this, for example, where someone decides they need a pair of shoes. They may go somewhere, usually a Google search page or something like that. In this instance, it's Instagram, but they'd search for a particular solution. They may find a few that, grab their interest, go to one of those, purchase a particular pair of shoes that they think is suitable and what they're looking for. So that's a very basic customer journey map. But the same applies to the business scenario. So B2B still go through this process, and it's usually a longer process. So the first process might be where they're identifying what their problem is or what the solutions to their problem might be. And that's where they go on some research and they identify particular solutions and risks associated with each one, and a range of other things like cost and etc., ease of implementation, and a range of other factors that you would probably know quite well in terms of your business customers. So that's sort of the first stage. And we might often refer to this as the awareness phase. They're looking to understand what their problem is, and identify solutions for that particular problem. The next stage would be, in this case, it's called elimination, but in a sales funnel type scenario, we'll often call this stage the consideration phase. So this is where they're considering the different solutions they've researched, and they're now going to identify the, 2, 3, or 4, or whatever it might be, that might be the best sort of fits. So it's like a short list, and removing the ones that aren't on that list. And then the final stage will be based on a range of different factors. They'll then purchase that particular product. In a sales funnel stage, that might be called the conversion stage, for example. So it's really awareness, consideration, and conversion are the 3 stages, although there might be multiple stages within those. So when they're at different stages, they're going to be looking for different types of information, you can imagine. So someone that's looking to identify what their problem is, for example, or what solutions there are out there, are really in that research stage where they're looking for information that might assist them in that space. Whereas at the other end of the scale, when they're making a decision, they're looking for things like, quotes and maybe a, consultation with the sales or business development person, for example. In the middle stage, they're really trying to identify the best fit. So this might be where you introduce maybe, could be a trial. You could also use trials at decision phase, but it could be a webinar, case studies, testimonials, a range of different factors that you could bring in there, or content types, if you like, that you might want to provide that customer to help them make that decision as to whether you're a good fit for them. So just looking at that in a bit more detail. So there's the 3 phases. What's my problem? How do I fix my problem? And are you a fit for me? Really, the information types there, I've just sort of listed some here, but it's really about those 3 things. So they want education and thought leadership at that sort of stage. They're looking for vendors that have information that's going to fill that information gap that they have. And the second stage is where they're trying to identify how to fix their problem. It's really where they're looking for solutions, maybe comparisons to other types of solutions, and a range of other aspects that you can see there. And then the final stage could be things like case studies, return on investment, for example, how the process to buying the solution, for example, pricing and pricing comparisons, for example. So what we're really talking about here is what's often referred to as inbound marketing. So inbound marketing is a way to use different types of content to target different people at different stages of their journey with you. So it would use a combination of content that you develop, your assets, and then you would distribute that through various channels. And those channels could be any one of those. And they could also include, for example, your website, of course, blog posts. But, you've got email marketing, social media marketing, search engine optimization, digital advertising, for example, as opposed to what's often referred to as outbound marketing and maybe more traditional methods, such as trade shows, cold calling, even networking events, that sort of thing. Now, I'm not saying they're not good to do. I'm just saying that inbound marketing is really a different approach to all of this. So let's just look at some of those different assets that you have, for example, and how you can use that to through different channels to influence people at different stages of their journey, for example. So your website, for example. So I've just got an example here of Cleanaways. I've just got this off the web. It's pretty good because it provides a range of information that people will be looking for when they're looking to make a decision at any of those stages. So what a website does for you basically is it builds your brand awareness. People can find you on Google, on Bing, or on blog posts, maybe through a referral or other way. But there are lots of ways that people can find you if you have strong online presence through a website. It also allows you to build credibility because, they visit the site, it looks professional. You might have case studies on there, testimonials. So it builds your credibility. It also allows you to demonstrate what you can do, what experience you've got, what you're capable of doing. All of these things are going to be asked in a standard request for proposal, request for tender, that sort of thing. So this is the sort of information you also need on your website, depending on the sort of business-to-business model, the products and services that you offer and the customer types. But you want to promote your testimonials on your website, so people can see that, you've got happy customers, you're getting 5-star reviews, etc. You may also want to introduce your team. So this is a great way to introduce people like your different highly skilled staff that might get you over the line when you're trying to get a job with a client. Or, of course, you can promote your products and services as well. Very important. You can use your search engine optimization and search engine marketing to get found on Google searches. So really, depending on your customer and the journey they go on, at any stage, are they going to go to a search engine and search for a particular solution in that research phase? And that's where you want to make sure that you rank on a search page, not just Google. Google say 80%, Bing's 20%. So you shouldn't forget about Bing either. And there's multiple ways that you can have a strong presence on a Google search page or a Bing search page. So just to show you the 3 places here, there's obviously Google search ads. If you have a product that suits the Google shopping tab and that platform, then there's also Google shopping ads as well. There's Google My Business. If you're a local business, or even if you're not a local business, you should have a strong profile here, because not only does it get you found locally, but it will also, you're basically listing on Google's business directory. So I think it's very important to do that anyway. They verify your business, and it's just a useful platform for building authority overall in Google's eyes. And then there's the search engine part, so the organic results that people are going to find you. So it looks like here there's only 1 result, but on any given search page, there's going to be 10 organic results. And, they're often going to be the way that people find you and get attracted to your website. So if you think of that sales funnel and that awareness stage, this becomes very critical, and it sort of becomes a foundation upon which you can build everything else, such as your advertising, for example. Okay, so, and I do talk about intent-based search terms. So if you did do advertising, for example, or certain pages, you can use certain intent-based search terms, so buy or price, for example. It could be in one of those search terms that you're trying to rank for, which would imply to Google that someone's trying to get a price on a particular service or solution. It would be useful if you had that maybe on your website as well, if that's sort of fits your model. Now, there's also social media marketing, of course. So this is all about your online presence, of course. So you can use social media marketing to build brand awareness, of course, and that should probably be your primary objective when you're using social media marketing. But it's also, depending on your platform, a good way to connect to decision makers, such as using LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great way to get directly to decision makers in your target market. And unlike other platforms, you know, you've got, it's highly, I guess it's top heavy with decision makers, and also, you know, in terms of buying power compared to, say, Facebook or Instagram. I'm not saying that's what you need to do. I'm just saying you might want to consider that if that's sort of what fits your particular product and target audience. So, sort of talked about this already, but it is very important to have a strong online presence. So that includes, you know, these, but also other platforms. So your website, also email marketing. Email marketing is important. We'll talk about that shortly, because it's sort of the glue in my book that you sort of, you know, once they engage with you and they sort of submit their email address to you, it's the way you stay in touch with them and you move them further down that funnel. Social media, but also business directories. So business directories are really important because what they do is they increase your overall visibility and they provide backlinks to your website. So that becomes very important when you're trying to build authority in a particular industry. Also online articles. It could be review articles, but also it could be blog posts, and it could be guest blogs where you're writing blogs on other articles. So that's just a sample of, you know, in each one of those different areas, you know, you're going to be found by customers at different stages of their journey. So that's always important to think about that. So just once again, just reinforcing why an online presence is important. So 9 out of 10 B2B buyers, according to this council, CMO council, 9 out of 10 B2B buyers use online content to help make their purchasing decision. That makes sense, of course. Most people use online content to, you know, in terms of research and that sort of thing nowadays. 84% of CEOs and vice presidents use social media to make purchasing decisions. So, you know, that's very important, therefore, to be on social media and to have a presence on there. 67% of buyers' journey is now done digitally, and that obviously makes sense as well. So it is important to have an online presence, and I've already talked about the importance of your website, but we're just going to go into a little bit more detail here. So it is important to have a website because the first thing many people will do is use a Google search page or a Bing search page to look for solutions, potentially in their geography or just generally speaking. So it's a great way to sort of build brand awareness. So in this case, I typed in widget suppliers in Townsville. If you've got that search phrase on your website, you're going to potentially rank on that page for widget suppliers in Townsville. So very important to sort of just build awareness and get that first stage happening. But it's also, like I said before, it's where you can demonstrate some of these things. So you can demonstrate projects you've worked on, capabilities, build credibility in terms of just the professional look of your website. It's a great way to introduce your team members, like I said before, and also promote some of those products and services that you do. But over and above that, it's also where people are mostly going to find you. So they're going to land on your website because they've just searched for you. The most likely place they're going to land is on your homepage, funnily enough. So you need to make sure that your homepage has a lot of this content on there and isn't just an empty door or a shell, if you like. So some of that content I just spoke about, you need to have a summary of that on your homepage because it's the most likely way people will enter your site. It's also the most likely page to rank will be your homepage. It's also where people, when they first visit your site, they're going to make a decision whether they trust you, whether they're going to continue, whether they think it's sort of a fit immediately off the bat, because they may be mistaken and gone to a site they thought was something else. So it's where they're going to make a decision. In our industry, they talk about this 7-second rule. It's actually something to do with psychology. I don't exactly know the full detail of it, but it's where in 7 seconds we make a decision fairly quickly whether something is a good fit for us, whether we're going to continue, and what the next steps might be. So we need to make this abundantly clear, and you do that on your website, particularly in that above the fold section. So that becomes fairly important, that you clearly explain how you can help your particular target audience and why they should continue. The homepage is where you're going to usually move prospects through that sales funnel. So they've just landed on your site, they know nothing about you, they visit, the 7-second rule, they say, okay, yes, I want to find out more. They go down the page. This is where you need to think about what content you need on there to convert them to the next stage. Now, they may not be ready to buy yet, so you need to think, what do I need to do here? And in most cases, it's going to be potentially grabbing their email address, getting them onto an email list or something. It might be to sign up to your socials or follow you on socials, or maybe exchange an email for some sort of ebook or white paper. Anyway, there's lots of different things you could do there, but that's why the homepage is very, very important, because it's going to allow you to capture those leads. If they're going to leave an email address with you, well, the fact that they've come to you in the first place, to your website, they are a lead, but maybe not a qualified lead. So by engaging with you and leaving you an email address, they're more qualified, but it allows you to nurture them and find out how much more qualification you need to do, for example. So your homepage should really be answering that question, like you would if someone walked into your business or walked into your store, basically. Can I help you find what you're looking for? And you need to think of that from the user experience. It's really important, because this is the stage that you're going to actually gather that lead. So that's very, very important. If you're doing it this way, I mean, there are other ways to get leads, but if you think of an evergreen approach that's always going to be there, a non-advertising approach, if you like, then you need to think about what that content needs to be and what the objectives are for them once they land on your website. So the first thing that you might need to do is, in order to be found, is to think about search engine optimization. So this is about getting found by people on search engines. So, this is very, very important. And, the reason why we know it's important is because Google sort of tells us that it's the main way that they match. Well, the main way they match people to search terms is to make sure that that website has that search term in their content. Sort of a logical thing. It's a little bit more than that, but that's one of the keys. So you need to sort of identify, if you have a goal from a B2B perspective, you need to identify what those search terms are. And we're talking about a phrase, a 3 to 5 word phrase usually, rather than a single word. And so you need to identify what that is, and maybe associated terms in little buckets, if you like. And you need to do that for every single page that you have on your website. And particularly, but not just, but particularly the homepage, and some of the sub pages like your product and service pages. And then you need to use that keyword as the basis for writing your content. So it's like a topic for an essay, but it's a little bit more simple than that in a way, in that Google's only going to look in certain places. I'm generalizing here, but they'll look in the page title, the URL, the first couple of paragraphs, and the images. And from that, they'll try and build a picture about what that page is about. So you need to make sure that you identify what those phrases are and optimize a page around that search term. If you need to put a new page together because you need to optimize a page around a specific search term, it might be a location, then you should do that as well. So let's just have a look. So the good place to start really is to do some keyword research. So to identify what people are searching for and that sort of thing in your industry. So I look for workplace safety equipment. You can see there's some ads there. There's some Google My Business results. There's some questions that people ask. You can use that for a blog post maybe later. And then you can see some search results here. So I'm just going to pause it for a sec. This is just a recording. So this blue part here that you see, that's your meta title, and the paragraph underneath is your meta description. Now, this is usually, but not always, your primary keyword that you want to rank for. So in this case, workplace health and safety, and then COS, I think that's a brand. In the one above, they've decided to put their brand there and then some keywords after that. Rule of thumb here is normally in your meta title, you'd have your keyword at the front and then your secondary keyword after that. And what this is about, your meta title, is about getting people to click on your link as opposed to someone else's link. So this one here says overview. In my case, that's not too enticing because that's not what I searched for. I searched for workplace safety equipment, I think it was. So something like Officeworks, they've got workplace safety and equipment as their first keyword there. That might prompt me, and an image of a product, it might prompt me to click on that. So that's what your meta title is all about. So it is worthwhile just doing this, just to see what people in your industry are doing and to get some idea, but also to see what other people are searching for. Like those below, that's other search terms, so you can get a list, some idea of what people are searching for. And remember, you're trying to identify 3 to 5 word phrases. You can also put your cursor in there and it will also drop down a list of suggestions. I would recommend, maybe doing a bit of playing around here and trying to identify what some of those keywords might be. You might also go to the shopping tab and just see what products are there, if that sort of fits your particular product or audience. So in my case, in my books, that's like the first place to start. And then you might use something like Google Keyword Planner. And if you haven't used this before, it's probably a good thing to start with. It's free, it's part of Google Ads. And what it basically allows you to do is look for some search terms and understand how much volume there is for those search terms. Because at the end of the day, you want to rank for something that's going to bring some traffic to your website, for example. So in this case, you can put into up to 10 key seed words. In this case, I've put in 4. So yes, this is just called Keyword Planner. You can access it from the tools and settings menu up there. So I've just put in 4 keywords. Best to put in at least 3, maybe 4, and then you can click on Get Results and it'll come back with some suggestions for you. So as you can see, it comes back with a list of suggestions and it shows you the average monthly searches. This is in Australia and monthly. So as you can see, Safe Work Australia gets 10,000 to 100,000 searches a month. Some of those other ones there are getting between 1 and 10,000 searches. Workplace health and safety, for example. And what you want to do is try and identify some phrases that you could maybe, this might sound primitive here, but put together to make a multi-word phrase. Now, the difficulty there is if you were to put that exact multi-word phrase into here, you'd probably find the search volumes are quite low. But if you were to separate them into phrases, independent phrases, you might find that those in their own right are very high. So what you want to do is build 3 to 5 words out of some words that are already ranking high, if that makes sense. You can refine and broaden the search. There's a whole bunch of tools to the right. You can refine the keywords based on brands or what industry or what particular application the word is referring to. And you can also export these to a spreadsheet. So you can then just at least have a spreadsheet of them there. So I would recommend this because it's free. And if you maybe spent half an hour, maybe more, depending on how much time you've got doing this, you'll start to see that you can identify groups of keywords that you can then start to apply to certain pages. Or maybe there's some keywords that you're not addressing, and maybe you should have a page specifically for that keyword. Okay, so I would recommend it. So once you've done that and you've got these groups of keywords, what you then need to do is start to optimize your page around those keywords. So simplistically, it's going to look something like this. So, because as I said before, Google's going to look in certain places. So you've identified your website structure, you've got a home page, et cetera, and then for each of those pages, you're going to identify a keyword. Once you've done that, you're going to basically put those keywords in certain places, really. So it's in the page title. So in this case, I'm Thomas Mechanical. I'm a Darwin-based mechanic. I went off and did some research, and I just decided that car mechanic Darwin was what I wanted to rank for. So I put that into the page title. If possible, I put that into the URL. It should be possible. It's just that in some cases, particularly on the homepage, it's a little bit more difficult than it should be. It's not really difficult, but if you can put it in the URL, that's a good thing. Just remember that if you change the URL, the old one doesn't exist, and you'll get people that are going to the old one will get a broken link. So you need to make sure that you're redirecting if you do any URL changes, but at least do any of these other ones if you can't do it in your URL. So in the body text, you need to usually, rule of thumb, to have the keyword in there a couple of times, no more than 4 times on a page. So you really need enough content to be able to, in a conversationally English way, be able to fit that in without sounding weird or spammy. So you really need, at least a couple of paragraphs to be able to fit in, 2 keywords, for example. But you might also want to put some associated keywords. So that's where that research comes into play. You know that people are also searching for roadworthy certificate. So you might put that in the text and have a link from there to the roadworthy certificate page, and also the brake repair. I know that's common, so I'm going to have that in there as well, and then have some links from that to the brake repair page. Now, finally, the last thing you're going to do is go to the image, any images on that page, and you're going to insert the keyword behind that image in the image alt tag. So that's the alternative text description for that image. Google uses that to understand what that image is about, and therefore build a picture about what your page is about. It can't see images, so it needs to read that. As well as people that are visually impaired, if they're using a reading machine, they're also going to use that to understand what your image is about. So as you can see, it's relatively straightforward. You can do that relatively easily, but also just make sure that you're writing some decent content as well. Not 1 sentence, for example, but maybe a little bit more than that. So Google search marketing is important because they're searching for your product, basically. So they're actively searching for your product, and they're what you might call a lead, like I said before. So or a qualified lead to some degree, because they're actively searching for your product. So I already touched on this already. There's those areas that you can target. They're all search-based. They're all search-based platforms. So Google My Business is still search-based, based on what people are searching for, the type of business. Same with the ad and the search results. Now, the more that you optimize your page around those search terms, the better these results will be. You still need to optimize your Google My Business listing, for example, but it's still going to help you. And particularly if you're doing Google Ads have what they call a page quality score. Sorry, I think I just had a bit of an error with my slides there, but the page quality score will, or the ad quality score will, you want that to be as high as possible. And the way you do that is to optimize your page around the search term that you're advertising for in search advertising. So local marketing, also important. If you don't have Google My Business set up, it is really important, like I said before, because this is Google's business directory. If you like, it's a Google business profile on Google. So it is important for you to do this. If you haven't done it, you can easily just search for your business and then claim it that way. or you can just search for Google My Business and go in through there and claim your business that way. Once you've claimed your business, you need to obviously optimize that. So, add your products to this, for example, or services that you offer, your contact details, your website address, for example, all very, very important. Videos. And you need to treat it pretty much like another social media channel, in that you can post to it regularly, and all of these things will help you rank better on Google, but also better on Google My Business as well for those local search results. Now, Google My Business, like I said, it is Google Business Profile, but it's also Google Maps and Google Reviews. So you should be using Google Reviews, to get those reviews for your customer, particularly if you are a local service business. It's very, very important, because people are going to see those reviews. So, there is one thing I didn't have a link on here. There is a new kit out by Google called, it's just marketingkit.growwithgoogle.com. You might need to search that. And it's a whole marketing kit that allows you to direct people to Google reviews and that sort of thing to get good reviews for your business, and then display them on your website. Very important. Finally, in terms of local marketing, now this is more than just local marketing. This is super important. SEO is a little bit, like I said before, about those keywords, but it's also how much of an authority you are in a particular industry. And the way Google determines how much of an authority you are is how many links you have to your website, essentially. It's a little bit more than that, but that's basically it. And we call those backlinks. So you need to build backlinks to your website. A good place to start would be your social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, making sure you've got a link to your website. Google My Business is the most important one in my books. And then you can look at ones like this, where you're getting citation sites, they're business directories, and you can just go to these and list your business. You can just search for these. If you search for Australian citation sites, there's a whole bunch of people that have provided lists, and you can just go to each of those sites and submit your business. So you'll need to submit your business address and your ABN, all those sorts of things. Now, if you work from home and you don't want your business address published, you can still hide your address on, I think, most of these. So because, it's a common thing nowadays for people to work from home. So, but very, very important to build those backlinks. Keyword content is important. Backlinks are also important. There is a third part to SEO, and that's performance, to make sure your website is fast. So you can check that. And the way to check it is not on your own browser, really, but to go to an app like gtmetrics.com and just do a quick test of how fast or slow your website is. If you're getting an A to a C, maybe a D, that might be sort of acceptable, maybe not a D, but if you're getting an E or an F, then it's sort of going to be any advertising spend or any of this other stuff that we do, like optimizing your site for search, will be severely impacted by that. So you probably just want to get a heads up on where you stand from a website performance perspective. So blogs are also an excellent way to rank, particularly where, say, someone's looking for a solution to their problem. You can identify that in long form format, put some keywords in there, have some calls to action, and that's most likely going to rank if it's optimized well around a particular, maybe a question or a list of ways people can solve a solution, for example. They're often a good way to rank. So I've got it's not a B2B example here, but I just wanted to show you this. I use it in another example of another webinar. But so I searched here, best handbag. So what Google thinks here I'm asking for is, what is the best handbag? So they're going to come back with a list of different sites that provide lists of the best handbags. So 35 designer handbags, for example, the best designer handbags of 2021, 12 Australian, etc. So this is where blogs will rank very, very well. In fact, all of the results on this whole page are blog posts. There's not a single static web page. They're all blog posts, basically. So They do work very, very well in certain scenarios, particularly if your content lends itself to this sort of long form content. Or you can just go and do some research and think about what are the questions people are asking about this topic, and then write a blog post around that, with the idea that they're going to be attracted to your website. You could also do guest blogs. That is another opportunity where you're writing on someone else's behalf, on their website. But that will also give you a backlink, but also potentially bring you some traffic as well. Okay, so that's SEO in a nutshell. There's also, of course, social media. Also in a nutshell, we'll just briefly look at this. So according to recent research done by the Content Marketing Institute in 2019, most B2B marketers are using their social media for three things. Firstly, to sort of create brand awareness. So this is not by far, but this is the predominant use of social media. So it talks about who you are, what you do well, and what you stand for, essentially. Then, as a secondary use or application, social media is really being used to educate audiences about the brand or the business capabilities, team skills, projects you're currently working on or have just completed, for example, or have just won, and products and services that you offer and how they might fit a particular solution or solve a particular problem. And then the third area is really about building credibility and trust. So this is the testimonials, reviews, awards you might have won, for example, or been nominated for example, milestones that you've achieved, these sorts of things. And if you look at those, they map very well to that funnel. So the awareness, the consideration, and the conversion stages. So when you're developing content, in this case for social media, you need to think about maybe creating content across all areas here, these three areas. So maybe a post about creating awareness, a post about educating your audiences, and a post about building trust and credibility. Or you might prefer to think of that as content that might cut across different channels. So the important thing obviously is to do regular, consistent posting to social channels. There are ways that you can do cross-posting. So if you have a WordPress blog, you can write a blog post, and then when you publish that, it also gets published to, say, Facebook, Google My Business, and LinkedIn, for example. So there are ways to simplify this process of enabling you to do that. It all starts with the content though. So you've got to start to think about what's that keyword I can write, what's that question I'm going to answer, write a long form of that, maybe use some of that in the blog post, maybe some in some of your other channels, or at least link to the blog post or something like that. Now, there are lots of different scheduling tools out there that might be able to assist you. I've just got Buffer as the only example I give, but there are lots of other examples of social media scheduling tools that you can use to schedule some of your social media content. I think Buffer has a free account for up to 3 social profiles. So, that might be Facebook. I think they separate Instagram, so that would be 2. And then maybe one other, it could be Google My Business, for example. Then, of course, there's advertising. So we're still sort of talking about that online presence, where you're going to, the different touch points, if you like, when your customers are on that journey, and where you're going to, what piece of, what digital asset that you own can you use to touch those potential clients at that touch point. In this case, it might be advertising. So there are lots of different advertising platforms. The most common ones would be Facebook, for example. And traditionally, you're going to use this if you're selling primarily to consumers. That's a rough rule of thumb. It doesn't always apply, of course, because a lot of consumers are in their own right are also business decision makers. So you can also access them there. Google you would use if you're looking to advertise something that's easily searchable by your target audience, because it's search term based. And then you've got LinkedIn if you're targeting, the business and government marketplaces. So generally speaking, you've got these two platforms. Google, it's not called AdWords anymore, it's just Google Ads. It's based on what they're searching for. It's about user intent, and they're actively searching for your product. So they're really engaged. Whereas Facebook ads, it's more about their characteristics, their general preferences, for example, and it's about the user behavior, personality, but it's also partly spontaneous decision-making, if you like, because they weren't necessarily actively looking for your product at that very moment, potentially. Then there's LinkedIn, and like I said before, it's a great platform if you're looking to target specific individuals by job title, for example, or by roles that they have in individual companies, for example. So, it is the platform, the business social media platform. So you've got a lot of decision makers there and a lot of buying power. Now, the advertising on LinkedIn, if you haven't used it before, it's fairly simple to use. They provide a campaign manager, which is a great, intuitive sort of tool. It's all objective-based advertising, so based on what you're trying to achieve. But you can do either company targeting, account-based marketing campaigns, targeting specific companies, contact targeting, where you're targeting individuals, and then you can do retargeting pretty much like you can on Google. So you're targeting them either on on LinkedIn, or through other websites that they might be visiting. So if you haven't visited LinkedIn before, it's probably worthwhile going there, because they've got LinkedIn marketing solutions and LinkedIn sales solutions. It is worthwhile visiting, I think, just to see what's available. And even if you're not going to do advertising immediately, it's a great platform that you should probably have a presence on. Now, in terms of the types of ads that they do sponsored content, which is like a boosted post, if you like. You can do messenger type, personalized messaging, messenger advertising, and yes, and also text ads, just like Google search ads. So sorry, Jennifer, just answering your question. Whoops, sorry, just clicked on something there. It can be expensive and they're not as engaged. So it's up to you to do, to really target your audience and have some decent, headlines and that sort of thing to get your results on LinkedIn, because they're not engaged as they might be on, say, Facebook, because they're not going to spend, hours and hours on there. But the great thing about LinkedIn is that it's very, very accurate. So you know that who you're advertising to is who you're advertising to. But it also allows you to do things like this sponsored in-mail. So this is where you're targeting individuals directly. So because of that, you may not get, it may cost you more, but you're getting much better qualified results than you might do on, say, some of the other platforms where you might get a bit of tire kicking, for example. So you're going to get much more qualified leads in that regard. And also it's a way to get to really high value decision makers that you can't do on any of those platforms. So you need to think about, what's the value of that to me? And in most cases, it's going to be a high value to you. So it's just something I think you should consider. But even if you're not doing advertising, you should have a presence on there. It's very easy to connect to people, other people that you might want to connect to build a network of contacts. So yeah, I do recommend it. And in terms of advertising, the great thing about it too is it's very similar to Facebook and Google. You can try it, and just see what sort of results you're going to get from that sort of platform. Even if it's just for a week, just to see the results. But I can't emphasize enough about just getting the creative right. because these people are generally busy and you need to break through that noise basically. So it needs to be very personalized, targeted to that target audience. But there are other tools as well. So that was LinkedIn Marketing Solutions. And I'm not sure, there's also, well, let's just, before I move on from LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, I will talk a little bit about LinkedIn Sales Solutions in a second. So the great thing about Campaign Manager is it just simplifies it into, well, before I go into that, the different types of information that's available. You can see there's a raft of information here that's quite valuable. So I do recommend visiting that, the resources available and that sort of thing. But you can see there's 3 objectives basically, and it aligns to those funnels that are the stages in that funnel. So if you think about that, usually you're going to be setting aside a portion of your budget for each stage of this funnel. So if you're $100, you might put $50 aside for awareness, $25 or $30 for consideration, and $20 for conversion. As an example, that was just a rough example. But you're going to need to set some aside. And then depending on your objective, there are different types of ads. And depending on what you're advertising. So if it's an event, there's specific event ads, but also very similar to some of the other ad platforms if you've used Facebook ads as well. Very, very similar. There are lead generation forms. So that's where someone is actually, the form is pre-filled. They're just submitting that form essentially and maybe answering a couple of questions. So it's a great way to qualify the leads further if you need to find out, some information before they submit their form, just to enable you to do more qualified, or understand them a little bit more so you can customize your response. You can do things like spotlight ads, you can increase your followers. There's a range of different things that you can do on LinkedIn. It's quite useful. Now, there is also this tool, I'll just talk about it briefly, but if you have a team of salespeople, for example, and they're looking to develop leads and get more sales, then that's the other advantage that LinkedIn has, in that it has this sales navigator tool. And it's just really a tool like a CRM, if you like. It's not quite a CRM. You'd probably still integrate your CRM into this, but it's just a way for them to target specific businesses, industry types, and contact those people directly. So it's a fantastic tool that, I would have given my arm for back in the day when I used to maybe sit on this is going back a little while now, but I started with phone books basically and contacting people that way. So, this would have been a dream come true back then. So some fantastic tools that you can use. In terms of pricing for this, I think I do have pricing here. This is the sales solutions page if you want to maybe just visit that. So they've got Sales Navigator and Insights, which is more reporting, and you can look at different types of solutions there, compare the plans and that sort of thing. So I do compare the plans here. I'm not sure exactly. Just bear with me in a second. But that's the other thing. I'm not 100% sure that the pricing I show on here is right. So I would recommend, if you are interested, just to go and have a look yourself and just to investigate those. Yeah, but that's what I guess makes LinkedIn unique from that regard, in that you can do that really targeted sales. So there are different plans depending on how many sales reps you've got. There's a free plan. A free trial, not a free plan. And just seeing, sorry, I thought I did have pricing. There it is there. So now, like I said, I'm not 100% sure. So that would be a single user, $99, and that would be US, I'm guessing. So you need to double check this and just see if it's something that, you can use, and if it's going to be of value to you. I am the sales rep and everything else. Understand, yes. Yeah, it can be difficult. But that, so that's why something like this is super useful, I think. $99 a month, it's a free trial. Maybe give it a trial and see if it's something that you think you can get some value. You can get one sale potentially, depending on, the value of your product. You've got your return. Now, just briefly touch on a couple of other things. So you can do retargeting as well, of course. So this is retargeting on advertising platforms. You can also do retargeting on email, and we'll briefly touch on that. Just need to check the time. I'm running really late here. So you can do retargeting, and this is probably on its way out, actually, or there's a whole change coming next year where cookies and pixels are sort of on their way out, but you can retarget people that have visited your website on other platforms. So depending on which retargeting you're using, LinkedIn and Google will retarget people on other websites. Facebook, you'll retarget them on Facebook or Instagram. So might be something to think about. Now, I'm just going to have to shoot through a few here. So I recommend that in that sales funnel, you might think about using email marketing as the glue that keeps everything together. So it's communicating with people at the right time, sending them the right sort of content. Now, how do you do that? Well, these tools are pretty sophisticated if you haven't used them. And there's a whole bunch of them around, but they do segmentation and automation, and that allows you to do some of those things. There are lots of different platforms out there. You need to probably find the one that's best for you. And depending, MailerLite, for example, is a good free plan to start with. It has all the features, and you don't have to pay anything until you've got 1,000 subscribers. There's Similar, which is MailChimp, but you don't get all the features, and it does start to get a bit pricey once you've got a few users. And then there's ones like GetResponse, which are like an active campaign, like the Rolls-Royces. They have sort of pre-built sales funnels and that sort of thing. But, GetResponse for 1,000 subscribers will cost you something like $50 per month versus $0 for MailChimp or MailerLite, for example. So it just depends, but it does make things a lot easier in terms of what they offer. So, a lot of people do use MailChimp, and it's something you might want to consider. I probably won't go into this in too much detail, but if you ever do get a chance, you can see there's a lot of things that these email platforms do nowadays, not just newsletters. So you can do some automated email marketing by using these. So I'm just going to keep going because I'm sort of running out of time. But you should do email marketing because potentially it's going to provide you with the highest return on your marketing dollar compared to any of the other channels. And that's because it's very personalized. It's also great for B2B because it's email, and that's what people are generally using. And it's just because you're doing that personalized marketing, it works very, very well. And the way you do that is through segmentation. So you get one email list, and then you break it down into smaller lists or segments, so you can do that personalized marketing to them. And segments can be based on a huge range of different criteria. So in this case, I'm just going to show you, this is more of a B2C type website, and it's using Klaviyo if you're interested there, but it doesn't really matter. And you can build different types of segments. So in this case, repeat buyers or VIP customers, or customers that bought a specific product, for example, or people that have just signed up to your email list. There's lots of different segments. And so I'm just going to create one here called test. And then what I would then do is just define who goes into that segment. And this is like an evergreen thing. It's always there. So as people meet the conditions, they go into that list, into that segment. So, it could be based on a whole range of different things. In this case, I'm going to choose what someone has or hasn't done. And then I can choose, whether it's an email thing, like not open my emails, or a form they filled out, or maybe something they've done on this website. In this case, it's a Shopify store. So I'm going to say, well, a particular product that they've ordered. And then I can specify what that product is and even how many times they've bought it. So that's just one example. It could also be based on, it could be based on time, well, we'll talk about that in a second, but so it could be based on a whole range of different things, and that's segmentation. Now, what you would then do is build or combine that segmentation, those small lists, with some email automation. And this is where it really becomes useful, particularly if you are that person that's doing everything. It really helps that you can do some of this automatically, if you like. You still need to do the setups. And automations are based on usually one of three things. And what will trigger an automation would be one of three things. Either something that someone's done on your website or something else. And that might be, for example, in this case, an abandoned cart. It triggers an abandoned cart automation. It could also be based on them just arriving into a particular segment. So they've just purchased something for the first time or for the fifth time. They go into a particular segment, they automatically receive an email based on that. Or it could be based on a date. So it could be that they need a refill after a certain period, or they need to restock, and you can automatically have an email go out and remind them of that. So these are just all sales type marketing or automations, but there are also the other ones that you might want to think about too, like, your product's been shipped, like a shipping confirmation or a thank you email. So these are different types of emails that you might want to use. And really what it's doing is it's doing a bit of your marketing for you, so you can then, focus on other things. And, there are certain metrics that you want to keep your eye on to make sure that your marketing is working. But I do recommend highly that you look into email marketing a little bit more. I'm not going to go into this in any detail here. This is Klaviyo. They call their automations flows in terms of the customer flow, that sort of thing. They do have some ideas. So I might just show you that. They do have a bunch of ideas that you can just browse. Most of the email marketing platforms do. And you can they're preset ones. You can just customize them to suit your particular need. So you can see there, browse ideas. And there's some there. So shipping confirmation, happy birthday email, abandoned cart, back in stock when something arrives back in stock, etc. So it depends on what you want to achieve. So definitely worthwhile considering email marketing to sort of support your overall marketing. And if you are using MailChimp, a lot of people do, these are some of the ones that MailChimp offers. So, welcome message, best customers. So these are sort of automated emails. So once someone becomes one of those, they'll receive this automated email. And if you think about a funnel, a sales funnel, you can do very simple email marketing funnel. So this is where someone arrives at your landing page because they found you on Google search. You have an email list that you get them to sign up for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be a dollar incentive. It could be just, because they're going to find out about something first, or, they're part of a club, or, more than maybe just a newsletter, although a newsletter might be ideal too. Then immediately upon signing, they receive a welcome email explaining who you are and what you do. And they receive subsequent emails promoting your products or services or capabilities. And within those emails, they're going to have links to your website or to buy your products or services or other things. And it's also a way that you can continue marketing to them. So just one of those flows I was talking about before is what they call a welcome email. And a welcome email would be exactly that. So someone signs up to your email list on your page, and then you have this automated flow of emails. So the first one saying, thank you for signing up. This is a little bit about us and what we do and how we can help you. The second email might be in 3 days' time, and it says, and these are our social media platforms. You might want channels you might want to follow us on. And the third email might be in 3 days after that, maybe about some of the products and services that you offer, about your capabilities and that sort of thing. So every time someone signs up to an email, they would receive that flow of emails. And you could then follow that up with, say, a newsletter or something like that. Or depending on how they behave, did they open your emails? Did they follow the calls to action, etc.? So something you might just want to consider there. Just very, very quickly, I'm just going to talk about some other apps you might want to consider. So there are proposal apps that you can use to help automate some of your proposal writing if you're doing a lot of that. quotes, responses to tenders and that sort of thing. So there's a few of them around. This is Proposify. There's also Panda Docs, and there's also Better Proposals. So you might want to just visit this in your own time, but it allows for e-signatures. They've got some pre-built templates that you can use, and you can keep your own templates so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. There's a whole bunch of these tools out there now. So you might want to just investigate them. In terms of pricing, they're not overly expensive. Just going to skip to the bit to the front there. Sorry, there were some templates there. I didn't show you. So commercial leads, construction, there's a bunch of construction ones there, but they come from all different industries, and they're relatively professional. So it just makes proposal writing a lot easier. A little bit slow. So that's sort of how the template would look, and you would just fill in the details basically, and then save that. Might not be suited to you, but just showing you what's out there. There's also Panda Docs, which is like the original one of these. They're quite comprehensive. There's Proposify, the one we're looking at now. There's also Better Proposals, which is a much more flash looking, more like a website type proposal. Of course, you probably wouldn't use these to respond to tenders because, tenders normally need to be in a certain format. There's also tools like this, if you haven't considered this. So this is really project management come business process tools. So tools that can help you run your business and integrate some of the platforms that you might already be using, like your email and your accounting and all these other things. And if you've got a team, then even if it's a third-party person, not actually in your company, you can also allow them to help work with you. So Monday.com is one of those. There's a few other ones available, including Ansana, which is the one we use here at Business Station. There's also ClickUp, which is another one as well. So you might want to just investigate those. Asana and ClickUp. There's a few other ones out there. Finally, just e-commerce. Just want to touch on this. So e-commerce is a great way for you. It doesn't matter what your product is, to promote your products on and offer your products on a website. So, and it really doesn't matter what product you have, whether it's a physical product or a virtual product. You've got a single product or you've got multiple variants, for example. So you can also offer, in this case, I'm showing you a simple, it's a bit blurry, but in some platforms such as Woocommerce, WordPress, you can offer, you can sign up people under different roles. So you might have a wholesale customer and they'll therefore get wholesale rates as opposed to, say, a retail customer. So you can offer different types of pricing. You can bundle different products for different types of customers. And like I said, it doesn't matter what type of product you've got. It could be tickets, it could be accommodation, it could be a physical product in a box or a downloadable virtual product. It doesn't really matter. They all are suited perfectly well to e-commerce platforms. Now that's it for me. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was a little bit late there. I hope you got some value out of that. And there's my email address there. If you want to ask me a question after this, if something pops into your head, please just feel free to ask me a question at any time. It doesn't matter if it's in a week's time or later. Yes, so I do hope you got some value out of that. You will hopefully all receive a recording of this. So you'll receive a link to a recording if you want to watch this again or download it potentially. So I do thank you for your time. I hope you got something out of that. For those that aren't aware, you might see that Australian Small Business Advisory Service Digital Solutions logo at the top. I'm delivering this as part of that program. If you're not on that program and you're interested, you might want to consider just visiting businessstation.com.au to find out if it's something that might be suitable for your particular business. Otherwise, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you got something out of that and hope you have a good rest of the afternoon. Thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing now. Okay, bye everyone.